Hey guys, why was I never interested in working for Google? Let me first say that in no way am I disparaging Google, putting it down, saying it's a bad company. In fact, I think Google is one of the best companies out there today. It's done so much for the world with proper search and YouTube and Android. So I have nothing but respect for the Google and the Google people. And I think it's a great company overall. That being said, I have never had an interest in working for Google or for any other large company for that matter. And the reason being is that, well, there's 4 paths that you can take as a developer in terms of your career. Number 1 path is to work for very large corporations like a Google, like a Microsoft, like a Facebook, like an IBM. The second path would be to work for smaller companies, small companies that you never heard of. Most of the jobs, by the way, are working at small companies. Number 3 is to become a freelancer. And number 4 is to start your own business, whether you sell your own SaaS, software as a service, or maybe you have a web development studio where you have a whole bunch of people working for you. So these are the 4 basic career paths that you can pursue as a developer. And the choice that you make has a lot to do, in terms of the career paths, has a lot to do with the type of work and the lifestyle that you want to live. So the reason I had no interest in working for Google is because I just don't like the idea of working for large organizations. And again, for some people, it's the greatest thing ever. So for people like me, it's not. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And last job I had, not being an entrepreneur, was working as a bouncer in a nightclub, to give you an idea how long ago that was. So for me to work in a large organization where you have to expect a heavy culture and structure that you're going to have to blend into or adhere to, or otherwise they'll give you the boot, you're going to be limited in terms of the type of work that you do. So if you go work for Google, as an example, you're going to be siloed into a particular role. So you might be the UX guy, you might be the AI person, who knows, depending on your skill set, depending on what you bring to the table. But you're going to find yourself in that silo. And again, for some people, that's the greatest thing. They just want to do one thing. You got some people, I just want to write AI code, I just want to write AI algorithms. Other people, I just want to do web UI, and that's all I want to do, and that's cool. Other people like me, prefer the flexibility that you get working outside of a large corporation. Now, this flexibility can be found working for small businesses. You get even more flexibility working in freelance, and you get the ultimate flexibility when you're doing your own software, you're building your own SaaS, your own software, your own services. This is a big question that you have to ask yourself from the beginning of your career, and you may transition out. There's different paths you can take, and you can switch paths if you feel that this is not for me. But one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, do I want to work for a large organization where structure is there, where I'm placed in a position where my ability to move up is going to have a lot to do with my ability to have good interpersonal relationships with other people? That's one of the reasons why I emphasize in a lot of my videos. I tell people, between learning a new framework or improving your communication skills, reading and writing and verbal, you better put more time and effort in improving your communication skills, because at the end of the day, especially in large organizations like a Google, you're going to advance if people like you, if you can communicate well. Those are the people who get pushed up in the hierarchy, if you will. Again, going back to working for very large corporations, you're siloed, meaning you're probably going to be restricted in terms of the type of work you do. Yes, you can move around a bit, but you're talking, many, many months to years to be able to move from, silo A to silo B and so forth. And they have to do that because big, large organizations have to have much stricter policies and protocols just to maintain this huge machine that is Google, that is Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing about working for large corporations is that you're going to come in with pretty good pay, that's for sure, especially if you come from a very good school, you got great marks, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also a ceiling. There's this glass ceiling unless you get into management and so forth. And that might be great. I know people who have worked their whole lives in large corporations and they've retired young, wealthy, they've done very well for themselves. But it's not just working in a large corporation, but it enables this is also good investment, good savings, living below your means, et cetera, et cetera. When you do work for large corporations, typically you're going to have a glass ceiling in terms of what you can earn. There is a limit unless you're one of the few who work really, really hard and you get into the upper echelons, if you will, of that corporate structure. That said, you'll see that a lot of people who get higher up in corporate, on the corporate ladder, if you will, they will move from one company to the next often. So it's often easier to get a higher position by moving from, let's say, Google to Microsoft than it is trying to stay within Google, pushing yourself higher. I've seen this time and time and time again. So again, coming back to it, this is where social, interpersonal skills, creating good relationships with people are going to help you to get those jobs. This is just normal because nobody wants to work with a jerk. Nobody wants to work with a jerk. One of the best pieces of information I got from one of my mentors was that they said to me that they would rather have a moderately skilled individual working for them who's really easy to get along with and gets along with everybody else and can communicate well versus the genius who's a jerk. The genius who's a jerk is always going to be a disaster, whereas the moderately skilled person who's personable and can communicate well is going to do much, much better. So again, emphasizing those skills. So let's get out of large corporations. Let's get into smaller businesses. Now, most jobs, by the way, are generated by small business. Small business is anything under 50 employees, I believe it is, or is it 100 employees, depending on where you are. Small business. The advantage of small business is that you have a lot more possibility to be recognized, to be found out, to be seen in the crowd, because chances are you're going to know or meet the owner. And small business owners, I can tell you, I'm a small business owner, what we pay attention to most of all is skill and capability. We will want to advance somebody who's actually extremely productive for the business. There's every economic reason for that. It's because when you have a small business, the bottom line, the profitability is so fronted paramount. It's so in your face. Whereas in large corporations, profitability is kind of like a secondary or tertiary thing, especially in very large organizations. People are more concerned about career advancement, about politics, because they can hide within the bulk or the size of the corporation. But for small business, it's much more about dollars and cents. It's much more about making money and productivity, because a small business is more vulnerable that way. So if you're somebody who you want to perhaps have the opportunity to learn more and advance more quickly, a small business is the way to go. Also, with small businesses, less likely you're going to be siloed in one particular type of job. You may find yourself wearing many hats depending on the needs of the business. So you may jump from UI, UX, and they say, well, listen, we need somebody to automate the server. So, okay, can you do it? Okay, yeah, sure, you're going to learn that. So when you're working for small business, you're going to have much more likely anyway. There's always exceptions to every rule, by the way, but there's more likely in a small business, you're going to have much more opportunity to do this and to do that and to get a broader range of skills. On the flip side, when you go work for a large corporation, you're going to get the feel for what it is to work within the context of a large corporation. Large corporations work and unfold, and their structure is different from small businesses simply because their size, it demands it. And it's something I talk about in my other videos. I talk about when you're designing software for a huge user base, it's a very different game than designing software when you're just starting out. When you're designing software when you're first starting out, you just want to get it out as quickly as possible. Scaling and all kinds of features and functionality that you may need for very large implementations, you're not going to put in a small MVP, minimum viable product, meaning a very simple iteration of the software you want to get out as quickly as possible. So when you're working for small business, you're probably going to be more likely, you're going to be in that situation where you're going to be iterating quick, getting it out the door quick, going back and forth with clients quickly, so it's much more dynamic. Whereas with large businesses, you're going to have a lot of red tape and bureaucracy you have to contend with. So it's a different game. It's a different game. And depending on how you like to work and what your psychology is made up of, you may prefer large business. You may prefer working for the Google or the Microsofts, or you may prefer a small business. The third option is freelancing. Now, freelancing gives you more freedom, of course, than any of the other two. Than the other two, rather, because you get to pick and choose your clients, which means you get to pick and choose what type of work you do. It means you get to pick and choose when you go to work and what time you work and when you take vacation. It's much, much, much more freedom. It's not ultimate freedom, because ultimate freedom is developing your own software and selling that and licensing that into the market, but it's a huge amount of freedom. But with that freedom comes the uncertainty, especially in the early stages of the game. When you're first going out there freelancing, you have to pick up your first client and your second client. So there's a bit of there's a process to it. It's not like getting a job, all of a sudden you get your paycheck guaranteed in 2 weeks. But if you follow a process, like I teach in my course, I'm shameless plugging of my freelance course, there is a process and you will get there. And but you got to be able to stomach the first few months of uncertainty to 6 months or so before things start to roll. But once things start to roll, you're going to see that you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of money-making potential. I can reasonably say that you can make much more money as a freelancer than you can working for a large business, unless you're one of these rare superstars in Google or Microsoft. And even then, you can maybe match some of those superstars as a freelancer if you put in good workflows and you leverage frameworks and libraries properly, and you learn to manage your clients and your projects properly. Then you can really make a lot of money as a freelancer while still retaining the freedom. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to work less hours, although you could set that up, but it does mean you have a lot of freedom. So if you want to go on vacation, you can structure everything to go on vacation for 2 weeks. If you want to disappear for a weekend somewhere, you could potentially do that if you structure your freelance business properly, because you don't really answer to anybody. See, one of the tricks to freelancing, by the way, give you one tip I teach, is you want to have many small clients as opposed to 1 or 2 big clients. By having many small clients, none of them own you. None of them can tell you what to do, because you have many small clients. Each one is not significantly important. So if you tick off or you piss off one small client, whatever, you got 10 other small clients, and it doesn't make a big difference in your life. But if you have 2 or 3 small clients, then you can have yourself some problems, so you don't want to deal with that situation. So yes, freelancer, the personality of freelancer, you have to be self-starting, you have to be willing to create your own structure, you have to be able to deal with some uncertainty in the first year, 6 months to a year, depending. But if you got those disciplines, then you have a lot more flexibility, you have a lot more potential in terms of how much money you can make. Another big advantage of being a freelancer, it's a type of business. So, first of all, you'll be able to be taxed as a business, which is much more favorable in most countries anyway, versus being taxed as an employee. You can deduct the cost of your computers, deduct the cost of part of your rents or your mortgage on your house or your condo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of advantages, lots of tax advantages owning a business, and freelancing is a type of business. Another advantage of being a freelancer is that it's a good first way to get into business. It's a great, inexpensive, and easy way to sort of wet your beak, stick your toe in the business world to get a feel of what it's like to manage clients, manage money, create processes, all of these kind of things that all businesses have to do, whether it be freelancing or your own SaaS or running a restaurant. These things are universal. So freelancing is great in that way as well. But again, different personality type. People who thrive typically in large corporations, they like that structure. They like to be siloed. They like dealing with the internals of a large organization. They may not do so well working as a freelancer, and vice versa. Finally, for the fourth route you can take in terms of your coding career is to develop your own SaaS, develop your own products. And that is the most difficult to start up, of course, but it's also the most rewarding, potentially financially, time-wise, freedom-wise. Because when you're freelancing, you got a heck of a lot of freedom, but at the end of the day, you are building and writing code, building systems for clients, so they're going to have particular demands on you. They're going to decide I want this, I want that. So you're going to have to conform to that. Now, again, as I teach in my course, you can maneuver that, and you can help them in that regards to steer them in a particular direction, because ultimately when a small business owner, and small business owners are very likely to hire freelancers, they're hiring you because they're not experts in development. So you will be able to shape and form what the end project may look like, whether it be a web app, a website, a mobile app, or whatnot. As a software developer, though, as somebody who's writing your own SaaS, your own software as a service, your own product, you have ultimate freedom. Of course, you still have to respect what the client wants. One of the big illusions that people have about business is that you come up with this great product, you bring it to market, and it's a super success, or it's not. The fact of the matter is, the way I have always seen products come to market and how they become successful is you bring out your first product, and it's got some success, and you're going to start having to iterate, having to make changes to it depending on what feedback you get from people. You have to be attentive to what people tell you, what the market tells you, make changes, keep modifying, keep refining. And you think of any big product out there, whether it be Mac OS, whether it be iOS, whether it be Android, whether it be iPhone, whether it be Google Pixel, whatnot. Pick any product. They're continuously refining based on people's responses. You're going to have to do that too if you develop your own product, whether it be a restaurant or a software, right? I have a friend of mine of one of the most successful restaurants in this town, and they're always making changes to their menu. They're always adjusting it. They throw out product, they throw out different menu items, different meals, and they see how people like it. If it sells well, they keep it. If it doesn't sell well, they pull it out, and they keep on refining. Like any other business, software and the development of a software product, it's no different from developing a restaurant in that regard. There's a continuous process of refinement, a continuous process of listening to people. So when you own your own software and you're selling this into the marketplace in some form or another, it's the ultimate freedom, but it's also the ultimate responsibility. You have to be mindful of everything, in terms of the product itself, how the UI, UX, whether it works, the marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, especially in the early years, I can tell you it's a lot of work, a lot of responsibility, but maybe that's for you. Maybe you like that flexibility. You like being able to switch from that to architecture, to UX, to marketing, to sales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe you prefer being a large organization where you just have to be concerned about your aspect of the app that you might be working on, your particular role within that context. Again, so when you're looking at your career paths, the 4 career paths I've laid out for you: large business, small business, working for them, freelancing, or developing your own software, your own product to sell into the marketplace, personality and lifestyle has to be taken into account. For me, given I've been an entrepreneur since I've been 19 years old, for me to work for Google, it wouldn't fit, trust me, it wouldn't fit. I would feel very stifled personally working in a siloed environment. Although I did once do a gig for about 2 weeks working for a huge publicly traded company. They brought me in as a hired gun, contractor, not freelance, a contractor. And it was pretty stress-free, even though it was apparently a high-stress situation, because all I had to do was make sure the help system was functional and make sure it was up to date for launch date. That was all I had to do. I had to do nothing else. I didn't care about any other aspect of the project. It was not my responsibility. My responsibility was just to handle that. So it was pretty stress-free for me. It was like, man, that's all I got to do. And at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whatever we finished, I was done for the night. Whereas if you're freelancing or you got your own product, you may work weekends, you may work nights. It's just normal. Like tonight, I'm meeting with my lead developer for Studio Web 4 to go over some of the latest iterations of the beta. 6:30 we're meeting, and we're going to run some tests, and sometimes I'll even meet on Saturday, Sunday, heaven forbid. So that's just the nature of being an entrepreneur though. On the other hand, I have a lot of flexibility when I work, how I work, and with whom I work. All right, I hope this wasn't too boring for you, and that's it for now.